Hey guys, in this chapter, in this section, we're going to be talking about functions. And a function is just a block of code that you can run at any specific time. So I'm going to create a new folder. And this is chapter 2, section 4. I'm going to create my index file. And I'm going to open it in my browser and in Notepad++. And I'm just going to paste my HTML. Okay, so that's good. So when you're creating functions, you usually either want to create them in an external JavaScript or in the head of your document, because when you're creating a function or declaring a function, it's not outputting anything to the browser, so that should be done externally or in the head. So I'm going to put my script tags up here, and any output we have we'll put in the body. So to create a function, you just want to write the word function and then name it. So I'm going to create a function called say hello. Now you want to give it a name and then parentheses and then curly braces. And in here is what you want this function to do. So I'm going to make this very simple, and we're just going to write out document.write. We're going to write out hello. So that's what this function does. It prints out hello to the screen. Now if we save that and reload, we get nothing. That's because all we've done is created the function. We're not running it. To run it, all you have to do is write say hello with the parentheses. Now if we reload, it's saying hello. And this is a function in its simplest form. We can also add parameters to a function, and we put the parameters inside of the curly braces, and then we can use those parameters in our function's body. So for instance, I'm going to change the name of this, and I'm going to call this function say it. Now you might notice that the second word of the function I'm capitalizing. That's a common practice in JavaScript. It's called camel case. You begin the function name with a lowercase, and then each word after that will start with an uppercase. So that's very common practice. You could also use underscores like this, but in JavaScript I prefer the camel case. So I'm going to say it, and then I'm going to give it a parameter, and that parameter is basically just a variable, and I'm going to call that word. Now instead of just printing out hello, I want to print out whatever this word is going to be. So I'm going to get rid of the hello string and put in the word variable. So now if we want to call this function, first of all, what it's going to do is print out whatever is typed in as a parameter. So we can say it, and we can type a string or whatever, an integer, whatever we want in here. So I'll say this is my function. So if we save that and reload, that gets printed out onto the screen. And you can have as many parameters as you want. Let's give you an example of that. We'll say word1, and then we want to separate our parameters with a comma. We'll say word2. So we'll write out word1, and we want to concatenate a space. So we'll say plus, and we'll have a string which is a space, just a space, and then plus word2. So here we can input two different words. We'll say hello, and then again we want a comma to separate these, and world. So if we save this is going to print out hello world. Now what if we forget, or we just don't add the second parameter if the function has a second parameter. So let's get rid of this second word, save it and reload, and we get hello undefined. And that's because we have two parameters but we're only entering one. Now in some programming languages like PHP, we could have a default. We could say word one equals world if that parameter is not inputted in the function. So if we save that and reload, that doesn't work in JavaScript, unfortunately. So we can still create a default. It's just a little bit trickier. So we can just say word2 equals word2. So we're saying the variable will equal whatever's here in word2, but if there's not, or then our default would be world. Okay, so let's add a semicolon and save that. Now if we reload, we get hello world. And now if we can still add a second parameter. Let's just say Brad. And if we save that and reload, then you can see that Brad overrides world because we put that in. So this is a good way not to mess up your code if the person for some reason forgets to put in a parameter, if you're a programmer, or if it's coming from a form or whatever. So that's a good way to provide a default. So I'll create a couple other functions just to give you a better hang of it. Let's create a function called add, and we want to put in, we'll say num1 and num2. So what we want this function to do is simply add num1 and num2. So we can say, actually we'll say sum equals num1 plus num2. Alright, and down here let's say add, let's say 5 and 5. So if we save that and reload, we get nothing. Now the reason we're getting nothing is we're not returning anything or printing anything out from this function. So what we need to do is return a value, and what we want to return is the sum. That's what we want displayed. So we need to say return sum, and if we save that and reload, we still get nothing. That's because just simply returning it isn't going to print it out. So we need to, if we're not going to use document.write up here, then we need to use it here. So we'll say document.write add 5 and 5. So now we get our 10. Now you notice we didn't use quotes because these are integers. If these were strings, and let's just do that just to see what happens. And we reload, we get 55 because they're now strings, so they're simply just going to be tacked on to each other. They're not going to be actually added. So that's as far as I want to go in this section, because in the next section when we do events, we'll also be dealing with functions. We're going to look at how we can run a function by simply clicking a button or a link, or even just on the page load, have it run automatically. So that's it for this section. I will see you in the next.